Hello and welcome to the Comments-Channel. This is going to be our first instance of an entry with regards to using a static video anchor playlist to provide a place for a secondary comment section. You might think to yourself, okay, is this, to what extent is this merited? To what extent is this useful? Well, for me as an aggregator, it's interesting for me to think about how videos can be used within the context of thinking about them as a hypergraph. Is the video really a vector? Is the video an edge? Is the playlist an edge? Is the playlist a vector? etc, etc, etc. So long story short, eventually, to the extent that it's useful and meaningful for myself and others, I want to be able to create a playlist of comment sections for specific videos so that even if you have a really, really great video, we can still bundle those amazing comment sections apart from the video itself so that we can tell our own tale in terms of using a playlist to communicate that information. So with that being said, this is the Comments-Channel, our secondary home away from home, where we go one layer deeper and provide some feedback, comments, concerns, questions. Maybe I'll do a video response. Really, at this point, it's an experimentation, but we'll see where it leads us. So this, in our first instance of an entry, is reacting to playlist theory for content curators. Number 1.1. Now this was crazy. I was actually recording content for as an aggregator. Normally as a content consumer, we the ins and outs of content consumption. As a curator, sometimes it's tricky. We're still experimenting. In this video in question, I was walking through Friday, I believe, and I was like, dang, okay, something's going on. When I move these videos, right? Like, the whole premise of this playlist is, clearly to index my subscription box, to provide a little YouTube television guide based on my hypergraph, to document my consume digest, to open source my hypergraph for others that may find it valuable, etc, etc. But in this case, we're talking about like playlist theory for content curators. So like, what does that even mean? Well, in this context, we really like to harp on this concept of a static versus a dynamic playlist. So what that means is that a static playlist is pretty much what you think of when you think of a playlist. It's like, oh, I'm going to a YouTube channel, finding a YouTube channel. Okay, they have videos, but do they also have playlists? Oh, yay, they have playlists. Oh, okay, okay. Well, thank you. Just have to give big ups just for the existence of playlists. This is being shot in 2024, so it's like it's less of a thing. Like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I would have been like, oh, damn, like damn, content creators really haven't really stepped into organizing their content to this extent, to the extent that there is even an existence of a playlist set of playlists to begin with. So that's gotten better, but now we're in a zone where playlist curation is kind of more in vogue, to the extent that I'm looking for things that I don't necessarily see, to the extent that I can frame out, well, what would I be looking for as a content consumer? So I guess we'll probably try to build that out in the future. But long story short, we're dealing with playlist theories. So we were organizing Friday, and we were saying, okay, so we described a static playlist. Take a playlist, you curating videos, you're organizing them, you're structuring them. A dynamic playlist allows you to change the sort by date and yet still have it be meaningful. If you took a static playlist and then you tried to execute a principle of what it would mean for it to be a dynamic playlist, you would say, okay, well, let me change the sort by date, right? But then in doing that, you destabilize the manual sorting, and you cannot pre-buffer that organizational structure that you had when it was manually sorted. So for us, in experimenting with this process to see, okay, well, how do we make this work? Is this useful? We sought to organize the playlist to the extent that you can change it from most popular to date added oldest to date added newest, and also date published oldest, date published newest. So to this extent, okay, it's a playlist. We're talking about a weekly daily quick pick series for Friday. Normally we would just move it directly from the subscription box into the playlist. And we're like, okay, that's fine. But we decided one of these weeks, I think it was like start this specifically for Q1 of 2024. We started in week 2 or week 3 where we said, okay, well actually let's go a little bit deeper here. Let's actually try to make a more impactful dynamic playlist. Let's change the structure. Instead of just going specifically, okay, we're looking for a video from this specific date, we're pulling this video and we're putting it into the dynamic playlist. We're putting it into the daily silo for that specific day, right? So if you actually went to go in and you started manually changing those videos after you put it into the daily the daily quick pick series, then that changes the whole structure. It automatically becomes a manual playlist, as opposed to if I moved the videos from my subscription box into an ASAP transit playlist, left it as such, or organized it into culture commentary sections, almost as if it was a micro reflection of a category specific playlist where we're saying, okay, well, this is culture commentary proper, this is blockchain culture commentary, this is esoteric culture commentary, this is social science culture commentary, this is natural science culture commentary, this is political culture commentary, this is historic culture commentary. All these little differentiations and minute distinctions that we use as a content consumer to track the stratigraphy of our content consumption process slash consumption digest. And that's what was going on in this episode. We were saying, okay, let's for Friday, let's walk through it. Like, hey, we're gonna use a playlist, an ASAP Transit playlist, and then we're gonna move that into the main playlist. And then, long story short, I ended up losing the video, right? Like this was all screenshot. So I was sitting here like, oh, okay, hey, like, okay. So why did we even start this? And then I was like showing my subscription box and I was like, yeah, like as an aggregator, um, we actually cannot go past like 20 days probably max. Or I mean you can, but there's like a cache buffer. We haven't tried to go more than like 15 days out. Usually 7, 8, 9, 10 days is like the sweet max spot where it's like, okay, if you let your subscription box pass through that as a like Overton window, you're probably not going to retrieve it. So to that extent, I'm like, okay, well, damn, like I can't always be looking at my subscription box. Come on now. So then I'm like, okay, well, how do I figure out a way to time bind this information for me as a content consumer so that I can kind of get a better handle on it in terms of its reflection of my consumed digest. It's not, as a content consumer, it's not just, oh, well, it's like getting super served, right? Like, okay, the algo's throwing you stuff. I'm like, no, no, this is my subscription box. There are elements here where it's like receiving a letter in the mail. It's like receiving a postcard. It's like receiving a courier message for niche uh, in-group subjects. People that publish every day, every week, 20 videos a week. People that publish once a quarter, maybe once a year, maybe they haven't published in 5 years, and today's the day they want to publish. As a content consumer, I'm like, dang, did I really miss like somebody's throwback? So I have to, go in, find it later. Like those are the kind of the moments as a content consumer where I'm like, damn, we really missed that within my consume digest. So bringing it full circle, we're like, okay, well, maybe, okay, it's a time bind. Let's try to say, okay, this was my subscription box for this specific area of time so that it will not just run into the unconscious, so that we can still have a way to query this information to the extent that we would like to seek to consume this content in the future. And so that's the process that we're engaging with. I was kind of showing that on the screen. 30 minutes, beautiful, videos done, videos corrupted. I'm like, yo, what? I'm like having like a maybe a 1 out of 10. I'm having like a 3, like a 3% freak out. Like, oh my goodness, I know I would be having a 6% freak out because like, oh my goodness, the work. Oh my goodness, damn. But like, I as a content consumer, like I know I have the reference material for hearing about the stories of content creators. Like, damn, 2 hours gone. Not just the video, but the audio too, gone. People's whole production wiped out. Live streamers talking for 15, 30 minutes. Oh damn, my bad. I gotta plug in the mic. So that's what it softened the blow. I was like, oh my goodness, as I make this transition to being a content creator from the perspective of me as a content consumer and curator, that kind of softened it. So I was like, oh, okay, well, it is what it is. You live and you learn. And so I actually re-recorded it. I was like, yo, let's re-record that. And that is a story for our next edition of the Comments-Channel for that video. It's gonna be included within the static video anchor playlist. But to double back to the present moment, we're reacting to playlist theory for content curators, number 1.1. So we gave a little bit of a backstory, we kind of framed up the video, and now let's move into some of the questions. Okay, so around the 24-minute, 50-second mark, this line of dialogue uh, made me produce some of these questions that I felt like, this is still an experiment on the Comments-Channel. How do we want to utilize this as a modality, as a form of expression, not just where comments will be enabled, but also for me as I'm finding some use case for you as the consumer going one layer deeper. So whether that be, okay, am I giving a more contextual explanation? Am I giving a meta reflection? Am I responding to comments themselves? We're still working it out. But we have some of these questions that I felt like I should try and answer. So question number 1, how well do you think you can gauge the relevance of content just from perceiving a title and a thumbnail? Now this is tricky because I would say better than most. We're working on a video for the different channels of YouTube. Whether that be number 1, you're getting super served by the algorithm. Number 2, you're getting provided an edge in terms of a link to a specific video. Number 3, your subscription box. Number 4, your watch history. And number 5, your library in terms of videos and playlists that you might have saved. And I guess number 6 is the search itself. And so, how do I think I can gauge the relevance of content from just perceiving a title and a thumbnail? I would say it's better with my subscription box, especially over time as it adds up to the extent that Okay, I'm subscribing to someone. Oh, how long have they been publishing content and how long has it been showing up in my subscription box? The longer I'm subscribed to content where I'm continuously consuming their content in relation to other content being published, and then kind of getting a baseline on that, and then going one step further and clicking into it to kind of confirm that, makes me think that I can gauge the relevance of content just from perceiving the title and thumbnail. I want to say 70%. I want to say I think I can gauge the relevance of content from just perceiving a title and a thumbnail at about 70%. But this is an interesting question for me because as a content consumer, I know that it's definitely not like I assume and expect, oh, okay, well, yeah, this video, okay, yeah, this video, okay. But definitely times when I click into it and I'm like, oh, dang, what should I have done? And that makes me kind of like reorient. I'm like, okay, do I have to just click in more and use Fibonacci retracements? Uh, Fibonacci retracements being clicking about halfway through, 75% through, and then 25% through, and then getting a an assimilation of the material to create a synthetic anchor. Thinking back on this this might make for a really good video. It's just to work. How well do you think you can gauge the relevance of content from just perceiving a title and a thumbnail? Yeah, we're gonna have to go into that later on. Next question. Question number 2. How much content do we sift through and not actually consume in terms of playlist curation? Oh my goodness, this is tough. Right, because the whole purpose and journey of this channel is like this fear of missing out in terms of content, not just from the content itself, but from the information. That's why we double back to what we're able to graft from just the title and the thumbnail. Sometimes that's the breaking news that we need to pivot to go on a search journey, because now we know that that term is in play. So how much content do we sift through and not actually consume? At this point, now that I have to make content and then consume my own content, I want to say probably 80% of all the content that we sift through, we don't actually consume. Is that? No, that can't be right. That can't be right. Maybe 60%? 60%? It's definitely, we're not consuming more than 50% of the content that we curate. Yeah, no, yeah, it's probably 80%. Yeah, because we do consume a lot of content, but we also curate a lot of content as well because we feel as though we need that as a surface area in our consume digest to kind of make us a well-rounded consumer. It's why, in terms of politics, I have my own specific political leanings based on my personal history and how I think about the timeline and the breakout cycle and the question of psychological types. But I also very much appreciate to have those counterbalancing opinions, even if they're wild, but that merits its own level of what it means to technically grade content in terms of, yo, is that a questionable quick pick? Like, yo, what's going on there? So from that perspective, yeah, that's why it becomes extraordinarily important to be able to understand a content creator so that I'm on page with how they organize and structure their content, so I can close that gap of expectation in between how a content creator is publishing and what I expect to get out of that content and what they're actually providing as a content creator. So question number 3, were there any titles and thumbnails that stood out to you to the extent that you're curious about useful Fibonacci retracements for consuming said content? So I think this question is actually for you in the audience as a content consumer consuming this content. So for you, to the extent that you've, well, first and foremost, at this, what is this? This is before I published 25 videos. So this is, I mean, this is our first entry for the Comments-Channel, right? So it's like, yo, what does it take for a content consumer to make it to this level where you're willing to go one layer deep? LOL. You're willing to go one layer deeper and employ me, indulge, my experimentation as an aggregator to find use cases for playlists. So from that perspective, I want to say thank you if you've made it this far. And I want to throw it back to you all in the audience. As content consumers, were there any titles and thumbnails that stood out to you? To the extent that you're curious about useful Fibonacci retracements for consuming said content. So what that means really is that that's like this is a separate video, and I guess right, because there is no actual video for this entry since we lost the video, but this was kind of meant to be an addendum, an adjunct. I don't know if we structured a playlist specifically for it, but what do we mean? Well, in this context, we're talking about not just playlist theory for content creators, but we're talking about the daily quick pick series for Q1 2024. So before this video was published, there were five videos published, one for each day of the week and the weekend. Monday through Friday, including the weekend, for specifically January of Q1 2024. The playlist itself includes the whole quarter, so that's January, February, and March, but I figured just to experiment with what it means to present a television guide using my Consume Digest, that we would index the playlist as constructed at the end of January from the perspective of date published, oldest and most popular, to kind of give a visual representation of that in the hypergraph. So if you as a consumer have seen or watched any of those entries, were there any titles and thumbnails that stood out to you as a consumer to the extent that you're curious about useful Fibonacci retracement? So what that means, it's like, oh, okay, well I saw something and that video was clutch, so I wanted to watch it, and I did watch it, and it was good. Thank you for providing the hypergraph reference for that. And then there are others where it's like, okay, well, if you as the curator can't even consume all of this content, then to what extent do you expect me as a consumer to consume any given level of surface area for content? So to this extent, I throw it back to you as a consumer, and I'm like, oh, well, if you guys present titles and thumbnails of relevance, then specifically for this channel or in relation to as an aggregator, we can throw it back and say, okay, well, you present, okay, something that stood out to you, and then I'll go in and I'll go another layer deeper and I'll throw back some Fibonacci retracements from the video and describe what's going on in that section of the video in context. And then we can kind of reflect on that to say, okay, well, as a content curator, is that in alignment? What type of process flows go into pre-clearing content? How do we echo the content to do it justice in alignment with the intent that the content creators had? What else can we add in relation to our own culture commentary perspective as a content curator? So that's always fun for me, and then it gives us something to do on this channel as we go one layer deeper and say, yo, so what was going on in that video? And then it could be hilarious, and we could do video responses to it. Next question, the last question. How do you define culture commentary? Oh, and this is tricky. I don't even know why I added this. I think it's just because maybe I referenced it in the video, so I figured I'd have to follow up. Oh, this merits its own video, but I'll try to give a quick response. Culture commentary stems from My personal history with YouTube as a cybernetic ecology. When I first started out on YouTube, it was how-to videos, it was documentaries, it was tutorial videos, it was music videos, and it was also Call of Duty content. In the process of assimilating that material, it became Call of Duty culture commentary. For me as a content consumer, what does it mean to exist within the cybernetic ecology of YouTube? Am I a content creator? Am I a content consumer? Am I a content curator? As I was consuming these videos related to Call of Duty, for me it was just about the technique. It's saying, okay, I played this game. What does it mean to execute that at a higher level? Who has already been in the space executing, and are they reflecting technique to the extent that I can find use in that context? And then over time it transitioned as I onboarded content creators, as I slowed down the search because those that I already subscribed to were publishing regularly, and that satisfied my consume digest. Eventually it just became commentary. They put Call of Duty content as a visual in the background, and then they just started speaking. A live commentary, even. Sometimes just, okay, well, we're actually playing live. Hey, let me talk to you about how my day went. Let's discuss culture commentary going on at the grocery store. So I guess for me, culture commentary is saying that everything really is culture commentary in the context of communication. It's like, what's the point of communication? Is it to tell an idea? Is it to share an idea? For me, culture is the domain space of the language as given and taken. The total sum set of all possible combinatoric choices that exist within the latent space of the language itself. To rejog a, a phrase from a manuscript 1300 years ago and say, hey, okay, well, I'm using this to explain what I'm saying. And you're like, oh my goodness, well, in this modern context, did it fit in seamlessly? Was it just an archaic reference in an academic context? Was it like, oh, two birds in the bushes, one in the hand? Like, people can throw around these heuristics, these idioms, and in many respects they work really well, but they have so much concentrated heuristics of culture as it's layered within the language. All of that was a roundabout to try to shape what I mean when I'm talking about culture itself, and then to merge that in terms of commentary. But for me, like I said, I started off viewing this stuff in terms of technique. So it's really about, okay, so what are you communicating as a form and function of the technique involved with this? And that's where I gained value, but over time it just turned into commentary. So for me as a content consumer, that's kind of how I established that as a technical baseline. Most things within my consume digest are various gradations of culture commentary, whether that be natural science culture commentary, social science culture commentary, esoteric culture commentary, or culture commentary proper, which is just the flattest aspect of just culture commentary, bare bones. Again, undefined and not really zoomed in, right? Because I'd probably still call Call of Duty culture commentary a live com, even though they were talking about just regular culture commentary stuff related to the culture of the present. But at this point in time, that's in many respects how we distinguish and differentiate that as a concept. So, it makes me wonder if that was good enough to chop that up and use that as a short or a short form. How do you define culture commentary? Well, for me, culture commentary is a stream of thought. It's a projection of will. It's a framing of intent, whether that be conscious or unconscious. It's a reflection of the culture. And as a content consumer, I appreciate that because that's commentary. That's that surface area of content, that surface area of a projection of reality that I otherwise wouldn't have access to consume, access to cognize that as a form of reality or a form of existence. So culture commentary, yeah, it's the sum total set of the will and the intent of individuals to the extent that it merits publication in many respects. Over time, hopefully, we'll tighten up that definition, but I feel like that was a pretty good summation. So that is going to be where we leave off. We're still working on outros. Okay, so go to this playlist. Yeah. So thank you for visiting the Comments-Channel. Thank you for going one layer deeper on the static video anchor playlist. And just know we will we will look to include Fibonacci. Yeah, no. See, this is still stream of consciousness. Stream of consciousness. we're gonna throw in because we're like, okay, so what do we need to do? What's the positive signal? So in terms of me making the transition from being a content consumer to a content creator, I'm like, okay, so like, the technique of content curation, like, okay, we spoke about that. That's, in many respects, that's the culture commentary that we're providing now. But as a content creator, I'm like, yo, where's that call to action? Where's that playlist redirect? Okay, here we go. Um, as a homage or a blank blank, we're gonna throw back a hypergraph reference to our first culture commentary playlist. This is gonna be the OG category specific playlist that started it all. We don't necessarily know the timeline for it, but this is definitely our first entry in relation to our culture commentary quick pick, and we're going to include that at the end of this video. So if you're interested, go check it out. It's a dynamic playlist, definitely not curated to any reasonable amount, but since it is dynamic, if you request me to change the sort by date, whether that be most popular, date added, date published, etc. Let me know in the comments-channel, and then we will try to schedule that into a process flow so that can aid you and slash or assist you on your content consumption journey. So again, thank you for checking it out, and go visit the Culture Commentary 1 quick pick. In terms of voice search, that would be culture commentary, open parentheses, 1, close parentheses, quick pick. Period. Until next time, thank you for joining and visiting the Comments-Channel.